And we are done. We are, here it is, all put together. I've got the ground plane running up over like this, and I've got the other one running out the bottom, so who knows if that's good or bad. I really don't care all that much. As long as it doesn't get into the props, that's the one for me. Speaking of props, we should probably just do a quick, eyeball test of the of where we are with regard to our props. What do you think? Double check that it all lines up the way we expect it to. So here are our props. We're going to just grab 4. I know these are probably not facing in the right direction, but that will be props out like so, and this will be props out like so, and then this will be what's that? Nope. Anyway, something like that. Wow, look how close that comes to that canopy. That is like super close. Yeah. Although once it gets down another couple millimeters, because you can see I just stuck it on there. Like, it's not on there because I still need to get it all set up in Betaflight. But there it is. That's what we're looking at. And hopefully this guy goes down like that, and we put the plug on. We've got the battery underneath like so, and we go flying. Welcome back to Watch Rob Smoke a Quad. I have the little tiny shark on the bench, and I'm about to get it all set up on the QX7 here. But first we're gonna just double check that everything is good. I actually did a quick Bardwell test, just ran the leads to the from the my multimeter to the 2 terminals, and checked and didn't get any continuity, so hopefully we don't have anything shorted, and everything is green, and we got the beeps. I think we're good. Alright, now let's get this guy connected up, and we will go in here real quick. Let's create our model first. That's probably the easiest way. We're going to press that and come down here to model 10, hold long to create model. We're going to do a multi, and we're just going to page through these guys. There we go. Now it's working. And long press, and now exit, and we're going to go in. There we go. And we're going to call this the tiny T-H-I-N-Y tiny, and then S H A R. Okay. There it is. And we're going to exit out of editing, come down, we're going to turn off our internal. Mode internal will be off. Mode external will be crossfire. And that should be that for that. We'll page over to our inputs. We're going to have input 1 will just be A, and we're going to exit, and that'll be our arm. And exit out of that, exit again, exit, come down here. We'll have this be our mode. We'll just make this mode, M for mode, and we'll come down, exit, come down here. We'll have this all the way up will be, that'll be angle mode on. All the way down or in the middle will be acro mode. And exit, exit, exit. And I don't really have a beeper on this thing, but I usually do a beeper as well. And we'll just call that B. And exit, come on down, and I usually do this one as the beeper. All the way up is beeper, in the middle will be crash flip, and then all the way down is off. So all the way up there, and enter, and exit, exit, and page over to channel 5. We want this to be auxiliary 1, so we'll just do A, and then number 1. And exit, exit, come on down, and channel 6 will be the auxiliary 2, A, and then 2, the number 2, enter, exit, exit, and channel 3 will be auxiliary 3. Enter, exit, exit, and that's done for the remote. Now we need to exit out of this. We've got our Tinyshark. I'm going to say Tiny Hawk so many times. I mean, it's just, they're just too close together. We've got that. Now we need to plug it in, make sure that the light comes on there, and then long press and page over to Crossfire menu. We'll plug in our battery real quick. All right. Okay, good. And we'll long press the Crossfire, execute. We'll go into our Micro TX menu and do binding, and it should turn red, and then in a moment it'll say update receiver, and we give it just a couple minutes and it'll be done. Really, this is why I like Crossfire. While we're waiting, why don't we just see if our VTX is working. So I have this guy, which should be able to show me the picture. And I can already tell, and the picture's upside down, but doesn't look bad actually. Wait, is the picture upside down? The picture is inverted. That's an interesting problem I didn't think I'd have. Alright, the Crossfire is done updating. We will if I flip this over, okay, yeah, no, I got it. Exit and exit and exit again. We should be good to go here. Alright, I'm going to disconnect and flip over my camera and turn this guy off. Alright, let's see if I can flip this camera over real fast, and we'll make sure we're not cooking it. Alright, so all it needs to do is get flipped over 180 degrees. Oh, come on. Yes, these are hair ties, elastic hair ties. And they work great for this. Okay. We're gonna turn this over. Without taking it off, he says confidently. And that should do it. Let's flip over. Oh, come on. You know, it never goes according to plan. Yep. We're just gonna hug those wires right in there, and then that one's done. And the blue one, which I took off and promptly lost. Well, it's a good thing I got an extra little blue one stuck to my pile of blue goo. Oh, never mind. I'm an idiot. It was already on the quad. And I just took this little Crossfire ground plane and stuck it under one of these guys. I know this is not the greatest idea in the world, but it worked. It updated. I got it, the Crossfire bound without any issues. I just don't want it getting into the props. And if you recall, those props are close. I mean, we're talking super close. So we are good to go there. I'm going to take this over to my computer, and we will get beta flight up and running on that. And let me just double check that I flipped the camera over right. And we've got, I don't know if you can see it or not. It kind of looks washed out in the camera, but we've got, oh, Inception. But we have my face now showing up right side up, and it's getting mighty warm, so I think we're good to go. But that camera really doesn't look all that bad if you imagine it flying around the workspace here. It would be not too bad. Before we wrap this up, I want to disconnect this guy, turn off this thing, which just eats batteries. Fly sight. I paid way too much for this, and it under-delivered. DCN. We're going to I was going to say we're going to check the weight. What did I do with my scale? Ah, there it is. Never fails. So, can hopefully, that says hello on it. We have 0 grams. Now we're up to 38. That's the dry weight. And with the battery, 56. That's right around where Kebab FPV says that that it should be for something this size, like a 2-inch. I mean, that's on the high end. Like the Mubula 6 that's coming out is like 20 grams dry, and I'm pushing, what is this, 38? So it's a heavier stack for sure. I could go and bump these down to like 802s or something to get a little less mass on here, because these windings add a bunch. And I haven't been too careful with my soldering, and I haven't been too careful with my wires, and the wires were too short, and a bunch of other things that those extreme guys care about. Plus I ended up using a crossfire rather than like a use guy, which is like 0. I don't know, 4 grams or something ridiculous. So there's a bunch of stuff I could have done differently on this build, but I'm very happy with how it turned out. That little guy looks like it's going to be fun to fly. So I'll stop jibber jabbering. Actually, yep, I'll stop jibber jabbering and call it here. Thanks. All right, I've got the quad set up to do just a simple hover test, and it gets up in the air. It's a little touchy on the throttle, actually. I was worried about the power, but it actually really wants to take off, which is kind of surprising. But the thing flew great. I mean, as you can see here, I'm just taking it down to the end of the block and back. I'm doing this through the FPV goggles. Bringing it straight on back, it flew great. My wife loses track of it here. It's so tiny. It's like impossible to see unless you're looking right at it. But yeah, and then I'm just going to set it down here, and now we'll see some onboard video of this guy flying. And really, I gotta say, it flew absolutely fantastically. I couldn't believe how responsive it was. It had tons of power. It flew great for such a small quad. I'm very impressed with its performance. Here I'm finishing off that pack that I just flew down to the end of down to the end of the driveway, because it still had a little bit left in it. And again, this is just a 300 milliamp hour pack. It's been armed now for 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and then I fly it another minute or so around here. I eventually get brave enough to do a couple of rolls with it and a couple flips, but then I couldn't pull out of one of them. It ends up smacking the ground here in a little bit. But yeah, I gotta say, I'm very, very impressed. One, with the size, and two, just with how it was fairly straightforward to put together, and it was just a decent quality build. I mean, it's not going to win any awards or anything. It's not like an Maiden, Marmot. I actually have a tadpole. I just got one of those, so you'll see a build video of that at some point. But it's a good flying quad. Which really surprised me. And again, this is all on Betaflight 4.1, and I didn't tune anything. I didn't even put any special rates on. Here I am hitting the ground. I didn't even put any special rates on it. I ended up in a tree and smacking into the neighbor's car. But hey, he's cool with me flying quads around the neighborhood. But yeah, and here we are on the second 300 milliamp pack, and again, it wasn't even charged up 100%. I don't know why it didn't read as 100% full, but it was fresh off the charger. Of course, these are a little bit old batteries, and I don't take care of my batteries or anything. But here you can see me doing flips, and I catch it this time. And then, just moving it around, hitting, gaps and things with it. It flew great. I mean, you really can't ask for too much more out of what's basically a $12 or $13 frame, a $40 flight stack that includes a VTX, a $40 worth of motors. I mean, they're not expensive motors at all. And then a $2, literally $2 on clearance, over sky analog camera, which has no configuration. You can't do anything to make it better or worse. But I'll tell you, I've seen worse looking cameras You know, and I didn't have to fight with the camera OSD or anything else to make it work. It just worked. I plugged it in, and I got pretty decent results out of it. I mean, again, like I said, it's not going to win any awards, but for a Whoop, I think this is a perfectly acceptable camera. You know, and like I said, I'm hitting gaps here just fine. I'm flying it around. I can see what I'm doing. I can see obstacles. You know, getting up close to branches and things, but you know, it's, you know, nothing is perfect. It's not HD quality. It's not a DJI. Speaking of which, I have a DJI build coming, hoping to do that on a HX115. And yep, here I am ending up in the grass yet again. Now, this is the 450 pack, and I think you'll notice that it behaves just a little differently. It's slower, it's harder to keep in the air, and I really didn't get any more flight time out of this than I did the 300, which is kind of strange. But the 300, it flew fantastic. It felt responsive. This feels sluggish, slow, hard to control, and it's I think the all-up weight on the 450 was something ridiculous, like 78 or 80 grams versus the 56 grams, although that was without props. I realized in my editing I didn't actually weigh the props, but you got to figure for 2mm or 2-inch props, it's going to be like a gram or two. But this all up weight here was just too much for this guy. I didn't feel like it was as controllable as the 300. And again, the proof is in the numbers. You keep adding weight and more weight and more weight, and eventually you reach sort of a threshold where it stops being, you know, practical to keep adding, you know, more battery to it, because you stop getting more flight time, you stop getting more power out of it. And in this case, I think that the threshold is really probably 300 or 350. Anything more than that, and it's just not going to fly. So yeah, I really enjoyed putting this together, and I've got a wrap up coming here right after this. But yeah, overall, I think that this thing flew, you know, just as good as it flew way better than my HX100 ever did. Let's put it that way. My little hum quad HX100, you know, it was just uncontrollable and crazy. This is way more controllable. So, and I think that's it. So I just finished up the Tiny Hawk, or I'm sorry, the Tinyshark. I keep saying that. I must have made that mistake 10 times in this video series alone. But just finished up the first flight, and thing flies great. And for, you know, just a little micro, I'd say it's pretty good. I think that the bigger bull shark will actually fly a little bit better than this. The Tinyshark is really small. It's really light. It's 56 grams all up weight, 70 something with the 450 milliamp hour. But overall, it flew great with both of them. The 450 was too heavy for it. The 300's just right. I have some CNHL Mini Star batteries, but they're 350 milliamp hours, and they're the same weight as the 450 Tattoo. So I'm guessing that either they're overrated or they're just heavy. And so I don't know which, but whichever way it goes, it didn't really add anything either way. That extra weight didn't make it fly any better. It flew worse, and the 300 milliamp hour was about 2.5 minutes of flight time, and I got about the exact same out of the 450. So I'm just going to say that the 300 is the sweet spot on this. Maybe you could make it 250, stay up a little longer if it's super light, but I don't know. 300 high voltage, probably go a little bit longer, but whatever it is, that's probably the end of it. So that concludes this series. I had a blast with this one. I haven't actually built a micro before. I've rebuilt the HX100 a couple of times, but I've never set out with the intention of building a micro. And for my first one, I think it turned out great. I love flying it. It flew great. You can see the footage. Yeah, keep watching if you're interested in this sort of build series. I am doing a Ripsqueak. I've got a 1S build coming up. I've got a DJI 2.5 inch. So if you want to see any of those things, just keep watching. Thanks.